Hey guys, it's Betty from bakerbetty.com and welcome back to another video. Now today I have a new recipe tutorial for you and I'm going to show you how to make raspberry hand pies. Now if you're somebody who's a little intimidated by making your own pie crust, I'm going to walk you through it step by step and I promise you can do this. It's not as difficult as you might think. Now these hand pies turn out really rustic. They've got a really flaky crust and that tart raspberry filling, but you can actually add any filling you like. It's a super versatile recipe, so let's go ahead and dive into the tutorial. Okay, so we're going to start by preparing our pie crust first. Now you can opt for using a pre-made store-bought crust if you prefer, but homemade crust has such a better flavor and texture, and it truly is not that complicated to make, so I really encourage you to give it a try. I'm measuring out 2 cups of all-purpose flour into a large mixing bowl, and I'm adding to that 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, as well as 3/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt. Now the saltiness of this crust really contrasts with the sweet filling and makes for such a lovely combination. Whisk all of those dry ingredients together until they are well combined. So now we need to cut our butter into small pieces. Now you really want your butter to be very, very cold here because that is what is going to help our crust be really flaky. So I have 1.5 sticks, which is 6 ounces of cold unsalted butter, and I am cutting it into small pieces, which is going to make it easier for us to work that into our flour. Now add all of that cold butter into your dry ingredients and use a pastry cutter or a fork to cut it through the ingredients until it is the texture of a coarse meal. Now the purpose of this cutting in process is that the fat is going to coat our flour, which will create a barrier against gluten formation, and that's going to keep our crust really nice and tender. Now also, because we are not mixing the fat into one cohesive dough, rather we're keeping it in little pieces, that is going to create little pockets of air when it melts in the oven, and that is where all of the flakiness of our pie dough comes from. Once the mixture looks like a coarse meal, you can squeeze it together to see if it holds, and then we are ready to add in our water. You really want to use ice cold water here because this keeps the temperature of our dough really cold and ensures that the butter will stay in all of those small pieces instead of it forming into a completely cohesive dough. So we're going to add the water in just a little bit at a time because the amount of water needed is going to vary depending on the day. You're likely going to need somewhere between 8 to 12 tablespoons of water, and I like to use a fork to gently nudge the flour and fat into the water. You don't want to aggressively stir or mash down on the mixture because the more gentle you are with this mixture, the more flaky and tender your pie dough is going to be. This is really the key part of making the best pie crust. You don't want to handle it too much. So just keep moving the mixture around as you add your water, and you will start to notice large clumps of dough forming. Once this happens, you can gather a large chunk of dough and lightly squeeze it. If it crumbles in your hand, then you need to add a little more water. If it does stay together, then your dough is hydrated enough. So go ahead and gather all of the dough into one ball and transfer it onto a piece of plastic wrap. Press the dough into a disc and wrap it in plastic wrap, and now we are going to let it rest in the refrigerator for 1 hour. This will allow the flour to finish hydrating and allow the gluten time to relax, and it's just going to firm up our dough. Now you can fill your hand pies with virtually any filling you want, but I'm going to make a fresh raspberry filling. So I am washing 12 ounces of fresh raspberries, and I'm going to allow those to drain before making the filling. Now, I should point out that this filling does not work well with frozen berries because they just release too much liquid. So if you do not have access to fresh berries, I would suggest substituting with a really good raspberry preserves. You want to make the filling just about 5 minutes before rolling out the dough because the raspberries are going to start releasing liquid as soon as they are mixed, and you don't want the filling to be too soupy. So I'm mixing the raspberries with a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, as well as 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and a pinch of salt. And just gently mix that together so you don't break the berries. So now that our dough is chilled, we're going to go ahead and roll it out. This is going to make 12 turnovers or hand pies. So go ahead and divide the dough into 12 pieces about equal in size. Now you can use a kitchen scale here if you want to be really exact, but honestly, I just eyeball it. Now we're going to work with 1 piece of dough at a time on a lightly floured surface, and you want to roll each piece out to roughly a circle that is about a 1/16 of an inch thick. I like to press the piece of dough into a circle shape before I start to roll it to just help get me started, but honestly, it really does not need to be perfect. One of the things that I love about hand pies is that they look really rustic and the imperfections are absolutely okay. Once you have all of your dough rolled out, we are going to fill them with the raspberry filling. So go ahead and place about 2 tablespoons of filling in the center of the dough, and then fold the dough in half, leaving about a 1/2 inch of extra dough on the bottom. Now fold the bottom part of the dough over the top so that it is sealed. And now you can crimp the dough any way you like. I like to use a fork and just press that into the seam to crimp it all the way around. Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit while we finish prepping the hand pies. And then we're also going to go ahead and make an egg wash, which is just 1 egg whisked with about 2 tablespoons of water. And we're going to use that to brush over our hand pies because this is going to give them that beautiful golden brown and slightly shiny crust. Now before we brush on that egg wash, I want you to cut some ventilation holes in the pies so that they do not rupture in the oven. I like to do 3 little slashes in the dough. Okay, now go ahead and brush a light coating of that egg wash on each of the pies, and then sprinkle each of them with some more granulated sugar, and this is going to give them a really nice, sweet, and crispy crust. And once I am finished prepping the hand pies, I actually really like to put them in the freezer for about 5 to 10 minutes while the oven finishes preheating. And this is optional, but it's going to really firm up the crust before it goes in the oven, and I think this is key to having the best flaky crust. Now we're going to bake the hand pies at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 to 35 minutes. Now go ahead and check on them towards the end of the baking time so that you can pull them out when they are a lovely golden brown color. So look at how beautiful these turned out. They have that really nice golden brown crust and that little bit of crispiness from the sugar that we sprinkled on top. And now I can't resist. I'm gonna have to break into one of these and taste it. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. These are so good. The crust is really flaky and salty, and then contrasting that with the tart and sweet filling, it's so delicious. I cannot wait for you guys to try these. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this recipe tutorial, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And I'm always happy to answer any of your questions, which you can leave down in the comment section. And if you aren't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscription button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. You can follow me at Baker Betty on Instagram and on Facebook, and I'll be back right here next week with another recipe tutorial. I'll see you then.